Christian Freeland, who are the plutocrats and how do they affect everyday tax-paying Americans like me?
So my book, Greg, is about the rise of not just the 1%, not even the 0.1%, the 0.01%. And that group, those people at the very, very top, over the past 3 decades have been pulling away from everybody else in the income distribution, particularly in America, but actually around the world. The threshold for the 0.01% in the United States is a family household income of at least just over 7 million.
So I really don't qualify. But
I don't know. I'll have to ask Jim about that.
All right, but it seems like a lot of these plutocrats are making their money and not inheriting it. You have names like Zuckerberg and Ellison and Gates. What does this say about the fairness of the system?
Well, that's one of the interesting things about this rise of today's super rich. One of the economists who studies them the most closely, a guy called Emmanuel Saez at Berkeley, describes it as the rise of the working rich. So compared to, I don't know, a Downton Abbey era or the Gilded Age, these aren't people by and large who inherited their wealth. They built it themselves. Now it helps to be born into affluence. Mitt Romney is a good example. Born of an affluent family, but he built Bain Capital himself. So yes, I think that largely what we're seeing now is the rise of fortunes built on these waves of disruptive economic change we're seeing. The technology revolution, globalization, and it's making some people extremely rich, but it's also hollowing out the middle class.
Warren Buffett was born into an upper middle class family and he went on to become fabulously wealthy. Now, in a recent op-ed, he says that the upper class should pay higher taxes. Is this the general consensus of the rest of the plutocracy?
No, I don't think it is. And actually Buffett talks about that. It's a very powerful piece, and he talks in that op-ed about precisely the phenomenon we've been describing. You know, the way the people at the very, very top have pulled away from everybody else. He says the combined fortune of the top 400 richest Americans since 1992 has gone up by several multiples. So the very, very rich, as Buffett says, are getting much, much richer. He points out actually that they are also paying lower tax rates than he has at previous times in his career, and they're fighting to keep those low rates.
What about the rise of international plutocrats? You're seeing a lot of Russian oligarchs and Chinese billionaires pop up. Do they act differently than American plutocrats?
Well, this is a global phenomenon, and that's one of the interesting things, and one reason why what's happening today is different from what we've experienced in sort of previous eras of this disruptive economic chain. Globalization is part of what's happening, the transformation of the emerging markets, and what I really discovered when I was reporting for my book was at the very, very top, we're getting to a place where the people, you know, a Russian plutocrat, an Indian plutocrat, a Chinese plutocrat, they feel more at home with one another, with an American plutocrat, than with the people back home. And the Americans say the same thing. So we're sort of seeing the creation of this trans-global class of the super rich.
And then finally, is the era of the Wall Street plutocrat over? We've seen less partners named at Goldman Sachs. We've seen a lot of people take serious drubbings from the financial crisis, and there's less willingness to let hedge fund traders grow fabulously wealthy. They're under the microscope now more than ever. Is that over? And what does that mean for the inequality in America? Because they've been the target. Wall Street has been the target.
Well, Wall Street, like if you want to look at who were the tribes of plutocrats, what was the way to make a super fortune? It was basically finance, technology, and emerging markets. And relatively speaking, you know, this is a slightly tougher time for finance than maybe pre-2008. But I think the surprising thing is how quickly at least some parts of finance have bounced back. Some of the top hedge fund guys are still doing really well. You're absolutely right, fewer partners at Goldman Sachs, but the ones who are left are still doing extremely well.